back to Quality Time, although it doesn't even feel quite right to call this an episode of Quality Time, being so much later than usual. Nonetheless, we're here to have a wee bit of a chat, a channel update, etc. And of course, before we get started, Merry Christmas lads, I hope you have all had a wonderful Christmas. Or if you don't celebrate Christmas, of course, then I hope you had a particularly amazing Wednesday last week. And a Happy New Year, because this will be the last video of 2019. And what a year it's been. My Christmas was fantastic for the 4 of you interested. Busy though. Monica and I had 2 Christmas parties to go to on Christmas Eve, 2 on Christmas Day, and another one on Boxing Day, just because of different family ties, etc. So it was exhausting and expensive. How about you lads? Anyway, now today's podcast, Quality Time or otherwise, is probably going to be a bit of a long one. We're mainly going to feature the Edinburgh Airshow I went to at RAAF base Edinburgh, north of Adelaide last month. And that's what you're going to see in the background. If I have enough footage, we might chuck in some gameplay in the background as well. But we'll cover that in a bit more detail a wee bit later on. I don't know if you've noticed, but this podcast is a bit late. I mean, even by my standards, this is bad. We're actually a full 2 weeks late on this one, meaning that there will be another podcast in 2 weeks from now. Yeah, right. There's a combination of reasons for that. Firstly, when it became clear that the War Thunder video essay I uploaded earlier today, at least at the time of my recording this, was going to take far longer than I anticipated, I thought I'd just go ahead and leave this month's podcast till Christmas. I actually planned to have it out on the 24th, thinking I'd get the grind problem video done by the 22nd or 23rd. And wow did I miss that mark. I think I'm kind of entitled to a short break over the Christmas period. Many content creators do, but I didn't actually plan to have one, and because of that, I didn't communicate that to you lads, so I apologise for that. I basically just disappeared for 2 weeks, and I thank you for bearing with me. I had actually planned to make that video, War Thunder, the grind problem, for ages. Actually, in the original script I had written for it, I said, with rank 7 main battle tanks soon to come. So that'll tell you how long ago that was, not far short of a year now. I never got around to actually doing that video, however, obviously. It just never seemed like the right time. There were always other videos to make first, other projects on the go, and so on and so on. And then updates would come out and I'd be busy making random content I hadn't planned on making, and that video kept getting put off. But then, a few weeks ago, I decided, what the hell, opened up the script, polished up the bits I had, rewrote a lot of it, ended up with about 12 pages of lines written. And then I'd decide I didn't like bits, or there were bits I wanted to add, and I had to figure out where was the best place to put them and exactly what I was going to say, which I'd then edit 5 times before I was happy. I deleted whole sections, ended up restructuring the entire thing, and then had it ready to go the day I uploaded my last World of Warships video. Or basically ready to go. I was actually editing bits of it even this morning. I wanted to be very careful with this one. I mean, I know, I'm not only covering a very controversial topic, but it's also something people could very easily get confused about, especially my proposed fix for the issue as I perceive it, and I wanted to make it sound as convincing as possible. Certain phrases, certain pieces of background music at certain times, just the way in which you word things is very important to getting people on board with your opinions. I'd actually been watching a lot of the channel called Full Fat Videos when I was writing up the script. They do film reviews as video essays, really good stuff. I'll link the channel below. And if you do know them, or if you do go and watch some of their videos, make sure you tell them Koala sent you, and I'm sure you'll be able to see the similarities with how I worded things, phrased things. I actually used some of the same background music they did, the thumbnail was a similar style, etc. I had some footage saved up to use as background footage in that video, just some random matches. But then the most recent update dropped. The game looks different now with the sparking effects, so I decided what the hell, I'd just go ahead and use footage from the new update, get all new footage. And boy has this update had its problems. The sheer amount of graphics glitches, the lights going all over the place, massive FPS drops and lag spikes, textures not loading properly, and bugs in general. I mean, I'll put up some footage in the background that I was going to use for the Everything Wrong with 1.95 video. It took me literally 2 weeks just to get 10 solid matches to use for that video. In fact, I would have gone and gotten another game in the British 7.3 lineup that didn't contain so much spawn camping, but screw that. Every other game, and I mean it, every other game I played would have issues with it, mostly graphically. And of course I wanted some good footage to use in the background, not just random 2-kill, really quick games. I wanted some more impressive matches, so if I died early, I basically just left the match and went to play another one. And all the good ones I had seemed to be ones that had ridiculous graphics issues, so couldn't use any of them. It really put it into perspective just how few matches you actually play of War Thunder. I mean, in an hour, you're not really going to get more than 3 decent matches in. Or maybe 4 or 5 if you have some quick ones or some failures in amongst them. And the crew lock! My god, do I loathe the crew lock mechanic in War Thunder, and I know many of you do too. I know why it exists, but in its current form, I think we'd be better off just getting rid of it completely until it can be worked on and re-implemented in a far better way. Crew lock in its current form has more problems than not having any crew lock would actually cause, at least in my opinion. So the script took an age before I was completely happy with it, because I was being nitpicky, of course. The footage took a stupidly long time to end up getting. By the way, if you didn't notice, we played 1.3, 2.3, 3.3, etc. all the way up to 8.3, 9.3 and 10.3. I thought that was a wee bit clever. And of course with the update dropping, I've been trying out some of the new vehicles. Yes, the new MiG-21s are overpowered, but at the same time the British Phantom, surprisingly enough, is also godlike with its buffed missiles. They're finally locking a realistic 16 plus Gs. And are basically as good as the R60s, they just can't lock frontally. But we're getting off topic now. I'll talk about the Phantom properly in an upcoming video. I'm just kind of hesitant to do so, as I'm sure we'll be getting another Phantom next patch, maybe a Japanese one, hopefully another American one, and also possibly a German one. Actually, I might as well say now, I'm sure a lot of you watching this video have noticed or even commented on a lot of my War Thunder content being negative recently. And while I don't quite agree, I think that a lot of my discussions have been about problems, or problems I perceive at least in the game. Criticism isn't necessarily negativity, especially if you're offering constructive feedback about how to solve an issue, which is what I prefer to do. I don't generally rant without purpose. But I think I am basically done with the rants and discussions for now. We're going to be changing up some of the War Thunder content we do on the channel. I don't think I'm going to do an everything wrong with 1.95 video after all, and next year we're changing things up. I have the footage for one video on the Chinese tree, not a discussion or rant or anything, but a gameplay video in a collection of some of the best or most noteworthy, or just the most fun and most signature vehicles in the Chinese tree. I'm going to make it all one video just titled War Thunder China. And then I'm going to do a video on the MiG-21 featuring gameplay in all 4 current variants. And I think that's what we'll do from now on, just cover a load of variants or aspects of a specific vehicle or nation in these umbrella videos. You'll know what I mean when I start uploading them, but we'll see how they go. I also have another plan for a series to make. Thank God I still haven't done the German light tank video, have I? Eventually, lads. Eventually. But back to the case of the missing content. It's not just been difficulty getting that video together, I've also had some other complications recently that have prevented me from getting content out. Obviously, in not having uploaded, I've completely screwed the pooch on that goal of 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. There's almost no chance of achieving that now. But I would have, because I've actually been working on a collaborative video with a rather large YouTuber, the Russian Badger. If you lads don't know him, he primarily plays Rainbow Six, but he also does sponsored videos for a lot of other games, World of Tanks, Dauntless, Apex, Ghost Recon, etc. and War Thunder. And for a 10 to 20 minute video, you would not believe how many hours Badger plays these games for, so that took us a couple of days and we're still not quite done gathering footage. We're going to gather some more in the new MiG-21 variants. That video was going to go out about a week ago, but unfortunately he had scheduling issues with some of his other sponsored content that had deadlines and such, which is just going to allow us more time to get footage in some of the new vehicles of the most recent patch. But when that does come out, I'm expecting that will bring a whole load of new viewers to the channel. I mean, the video I did with Maximus, who had just under 200,000 subscribers at the time, brought the channel some 20,000 additional viewers, and immediately 5,000 new subs, so a video with Badger, who has over 2.5 million, yeah, I have high hopes. But I'm going to talk about that more in the next month's Quality Time, so what else? Well, I've had some family staying over from the UK for the last few days. They came just before Christmas, and we've been taking them all around to some of the sites in South Australia. Of course, Australia at Christmas time, middle of summer here, 40 degrees Celsius commonly, or over 100 Fahrenheit. Most folks spend the majority of free time at the beach, and we've done that a couple of times. It's been very nice. We've got these boards, they're called stand-up paddle boards, you might have heard of them. We call them SUP boards. And they're basically like a flat canoe that you stand on and paddle, like a big fat surfboard. And they're quite fun, and man are they a workout. But of course, living in England, where, you know, during the Christmas period, the only time you go to the beach is, they're like these Christmas Day swimming challenge event, because, you know, it's so freezing there, so going out swimming in the ocean is like a fun Christmas challenge. So our British guests hadn't actually seen stand-up paddleboards before, so we took them out, spent a whole day at the beach, went jumping off the pier, which is actually illegal, both in the UK and here, but no one really cares here. In fact, I've seen cops walking along the pier while people are jumping off about 5 meters into the water, and they don't really care. You're never going to stop people doing it. It's just too much fun. And we had dinner on the beach, just because you can do that. Sunset here is like 8:30 in the evening right now. And we were just set up under this gazebo. We've taken them round to a few wildlife reserves. No tank museums, unfortunately. It's not all been fun and games though here, and there have been a couple of less pleasant reasons why I've been away for so long. I've actually been having some medical issues recently. I talked about this a few days ago on the Discord, basically saying, don't worry lads, that's nothing actually serious, just something debilitating right now, but shouldn't cause any lasting problems. Well, it turns out it might be more serious than that after all. See, I've been getting these symptoms recently that individually wouldn't really mean anything. I mean, I get really bad hay fever, and I mean really bad. A few times I've been completely unable to see anything. Every time I open my eyes, it's just blurry, and my eyes start streaming, and I basically just have to stay indoors with the blinds and windows closed and be hopped up on medication. Well, individually, any one of these symptoms could be attributed to that. Things like headaches, fever, trouble sleeping, nosebleeds, dizziness. You get the picture. Individually annoying, but not too inconvenient. But put them all together, and given the severity of them, well, it's something I might need to be a wee bit more concerned about than I first thought. And it's also stopped me from really being able to work on content. I'm going to see a doctor after New Year's. Look, hopefully it's nothing. It's probably nothing, but it could be something. All these symptoms put together, there's several things it could be, and none of them are all that good. I doubt very much it's anything life-threatening, but, you know, the chances are slim but not none. I've also had a family member pass away just the other day. Yes, again, for those of you who weren't around for episode, I think, 5, I actually lost a cousin who was murdered, and I can't remember if I said this in that video, but the guy who did it was caught, and I believe is serving a life sentence. And I don't want to dwell on this subject too much because it's not nice to talk about, and I'm not fishing for sympathy from any of you lads. I thank so much to everyone who said my condolences in the comments of that video. Really means a lot. Thank you for that. But I guess that's just kind of what this series is. Just a way for me to vent, I guess, update you guys on what's been going on behind the scenes, and maybe spin some personal stories in such a way that you might be mildly entertained by them. Well, this isn't entertaining at all, but 11 days ago, my uncle, who lives in the south of England, was actually diagnosed with lung cancer. Where he used to work, they had asbestos, and he was given several months to a year to live. The doctors basically said, look, get your affairs in order, you've not got long. And that was 11 days ago. Well, he passed away actually just after I began writing up the script for this video. I'd actually been looking at organising flights over to the UK, actually put a deposit down for a flight which I've since been able to recover, and I went through all the hoops to get a new passport, which is probably going to arrive in about 2 weeks' time. And my goodness, is it a complicated process to get a new passport, at least in this country, so lads, I highly recommend if you have a passport, you do travel overseas at all, for God's sake keep it renewed. Mine was about 2.5 years out, and if it had been 2 years out, I could have gotten it renewed, which would have been something like a third of the cost and not nearly so complex to get all the identification forms and papers signed and collect all the ID and all the other rubbish you have to go through. But all those complications in the 2 weeks leading up to Christmas, and then family staying here for the last few days, well, you can see why I've not been able to keep the uploads coming. But let's talk about something a wee bit more positive, shall we? The Edinburgh Airshow. Now, I went to this airshow at the Royal Australian Air Force Base at Edinburgh in South Australia on November 10th, so just before last month's quality time, but I didn't end up using the footage in that episode because I had actually planned to make it its own dedicated video. It was an extremely good day there, not too hot in the end, it was just over 30 degrees Celsius, but with so little in the way of shade there, and of course it's an airshow with flying displays, if you're under the shade you're kind of missing out. But I did get pretty horrifically sunburned. Still, there were so many exhibits there, from A-37 Dragonflies to Spitfires and P-51 Mustangs, one of which being the plane that won the war. And there were C-17s, an F-4J Phantom, F-18s, F-35s, and M1A1 Abrams. So many. I was really excited to show it to you lads, and I wanted to make a dedicated video for it, same way I did with the Adelaide Aviation Museum or the military demonstration I went to a while back. But looking through the footage, I'm really not satisfied with this new camera I bought. I actually got it a little while ago for the sake of doing things like vlogs like this. I did my cooking video a while back, and I had actually planned to do another one for Christmas, as well as using it for things like air shows, museum visits, military demonstrations, etc. Now, I couldn't afford the camera I had wanted, and actually the one I had been looking at you can't even ship to Australia anyway. But I made do with a cheaper model. It's a Canon mirrorless camera, cost about 250 Australian dollars. And it's supposed to be capable of 1080p video, but, well, I'm not seeing that. High quality photos, sure, but the video is certainly lacking. It's grainy, it's lower resolution than I was expecting, it's terrible at dealing with different light conditions. It's certainly not a bad little camera for that kind of price tag, but it's not the kind of high quality that I'm looking for. In fact, even an iPhone 7's camera is probably better than this. I only have a shitty little old iPhone 5 though, so I needed something better quality, and I thought this would be it. It's not quite up to par as far as resolution and quality goes though, so oh well. Next time, hopefully I'll be able to afford a good proper camera, maybe one with those big long lenses, get some proper lenses for it. And we'll get tickets to go into the VIP area. It'll probably be cooler, under some shade, and I can just record all the different displays for you lads. And then maybe use the footage in some Koala Explains episodes when I don't have to worry about copyright issues. This month, however, I thought I'd just include it in one of the regularly scheduled podcasts we do anyway, because it really was worth seeing. Fantastic day out. I had to wake up early in the morning, walk down to the train station and catch 2 trains out to a place called Elizabeth, north of Adelaide City, where shuttle buses were lining up to take us to the airbase itself. Now, the bus I was on got there bang on 10 AM, which was when the airshow was scheduled to start, so perfect timing. And I was already getting hot at that point, in the high 20s Celsius or mid 80s Fahrenheit. Anyway, from the bus we could see the Nanchang CJ-6As being flown around by an aerobatics team called the Roulettes. But as we got in from the bus into the actual airfield, the first thing we were greeted with was an aircraft that initially wasn't even supposed to be there at all, the A400M Atlas, which is basically a brand new cargo aircraft, only entered service in late 2014 with the Royal Air Force, and arrived from Britain only a day before the airshow, so that was absolutely fantastic to see, wasn't expecting that. The A400M is essentially the spiritual successor to the C-130 Hercules, with 4 turboprop engines, and the ability for heavy airlifting, or the potential to be retrofitted as a tanker for aerial refueling as well. Perhaps an aircraft I'll have to do a Koala Explains on at some point. And right next to that was a whopping great C-17. Now, I've been lucky enough to do a lot of travelling in my time. I've been on a lot of Boeing 777s, 747s, and even the Airbus A380 a couple of times. But my god, is the C-17 a big aircraft. The tail fin is absolutely enormous, towered into the sky above us. And where the wings were, people had actually set up their, under their shadow, they'd put out picnic blankets. They're sitting down there and were just, you know, hanging out in the shade given off by these enormous wings. Massive, massive aircraft. And there were a whole bunch of other big aircraft there, big by comparison. The C-130J, C-27J Spartan, all of which we got to see flying around later on, including the C-17, and not the Atlas though, there was only one of them and that stayed as a static display. But there were also P-3 Orions, our maritime patrol aircraft, and the P-8 Poseidons, which are replacing them. And the E-7A Wedgetail, which essentially is Australia's equivalent to the E-3 Sentry of America, although it only requires about half the number of crewmen that the Sentry does, so a really advanced aircraft. Opposite all the big aircraft were a few displays I was very interested in, which were the fighter jets. The RAAF operates FA-18A Hornets and FA-18F Super Hornets, as well as the EA-18G Growler, and right next to them was one of our brand spanking new F-35As, so that was absolutely amazing to see, just a Lightning II just sitting there. And once again, we saw all of those flying later on as well. Further on, there was also the cockpit of an F-4J Phantom, which I got to have a sit in. But unfortunately, and here's an anecdote for you, the guy who was manning the display, who was also Scottish, which was a pleasant surprise, didn't obviously know how to use my camera. So when I gave my camera to him, I hit record for him and got in the aircraft. And he was taking photos and videos of me in the cockpit. Or at least I thought he was. You can see where this is going already, can't you? Every time he thought he'd started the recording, he'd actually pressed stop instead. So I got 3 clips of the guy's knee, and every time he'd hold up the camera thinking he was starting to record, he was actually turning off the recording. Oh well. I did get a good shot from the front of the display, someone else did that, but this was a privately owned display that was kind of guest starring at the airshow. It wasn't actually owned by the RAAF. All the while, there were aircraft from the Pacific Theatre of World War II flying over the Hudson, some boomerangs, and then a tad later the A-37 Dragonfly came out and was buzzing around, which unfortunately I wasn't able to record, but my goodness, you do not realise how loud those jets are up close. Actually, the A-37, one of my favourite aircraft actually, tiny little close air support jet, wasn't originally meant to be flying until much later on, but because aircraft have minds and moods of their own, a couple of the displays that were meant to be flying weren't actually able to fly. The F-86 Sabre, for example, couldn't actually be there, which I was really disappointed about, but, well, what can you do? Anyway, the next step was an M1A1 Abrams. Yeah, how sick is that? Just a short walk over past, there are 2 runways at Edinburgh, and just over at the end of the far runway was a whole bunch of Australian Army ground vehicles, including a LAV-25 or ASLAV, which I have covered on the channel, and in case you're wondering, no, I didn't go inside this one. Not having 2 pairs of my pants, you bastard. And there sitting behind it was an Abrams, the M1A1 AIM SA, which is an M1A1 AIM without the depleted uranium armour, basically just used as a training vehicle by the Australian Army, because whenever our troops are deployed overseas, which I didn't originally know this, they actually crew American tanks that have the DU armour. We just can't actually buy them to have here. Yet. We might be buying them next year. M1A2Cs with depleted uranium armour would make us the first nation ever to have depleted uranium equipment exported to us, but as far as I know, that deal hasn't actually been finalised yet. But that was really interesting to find out. I was having a nice long chat with a couple of the crew members that were there, the driver and the loader. But I did check the size of the turret neck, and yeah, the one in War Thunder is way too big. Interestingly enough, the M1A1 AIM doesn't actually have a CITV. The commander's thermal sight is attached to the 50 cal machine gun. Anyway, I got to stand atop that tank, which was phenomenal. Well, you don't realise how tall those things are. And I got to see not only the ASLAV on the one side, but the M88A2 Hercules on the other, which is the recovery vehicle based on the Abrams chassis, so really fantastic display out on the side there. And then heading back in towards the airfield, my god, I did a lot of walking that day. Was bone tired when I got home, but that's that nice kind of tired, you know? Anyway, heading back in, I got to see a few of the aircraft ready to take off. There were the PC-21s taking off at that point as well, which are our new trainer aircraft to replace the PC-9. And these are the most advanced trainer aircraft in the world right now. And the RAAF roulettes were performing in them, which I was desperately trying to record, but once again, I'm not thrilled with the quality of this new camera. It was difficult to kind of get them on camera. But there were also P-51 Mustangs, a Catalina, which, once again, these things are so much bigger than you realise. If there's one thing I'll say that War Thunder completely fails at, it is a sense of scale. And a P-2 Neptune as well. And after the roulettes came in, we saw Spitfires and Mustangs flying, absolutely gorgeous. As well as, I believe, the last flying Hurricane in the world, so what a privilege to see that making passes. And after that came a Meteor, before the F-18s took off and were making passes, which had me absolutely giggling like a little girl. But unfortunately, I didn't have any spare batteries for this camera, and by the time the F-18s came out, I'd taken almost 100 photos, 30 odd videos, and the damn thing was out of battery. Damn it! So I only managed to record a couple of passes from the F-18s before I had to switch back to the iPhone to record that, and the F-35, which was flying around afterwards. Once again, incredible to see, and holy shit are they loud. I decided to forego the hearing protection, and these things, well, they're almost dead silent as they fly towards you, if they're flying at speed, and then they get close and, well. Yeah. Funny story, actually. Whilst we were watching the F-18s come over, one of them put itself into probably about a 50-degree vertical without actually gaining any altitude. It was flying really, really slowly, perfectly balancing thrust forward and upwards to basically hover at, you know, helicopter speed. It would have been going about, I don't know, 35 knots, perhaps? So, about 60 kilometers an hour, tops. And basically just hovering over the top of us by angling the aircraft upwards, angling the thrust downwards, so that he perfectly balanced out, angling the plane upwards to slow it down, while not actually gaining any altitude, and just flying really slowly over the top of us. And it was bright and sunny where we were, so everyone's looking up into the sky almost directly above us at this F-18. And if you can't see where this is going, we're in a big crowd of people, everyone's got their arms outstretched and their hands in front of them, and I should not have looked down. It looked like a Nazi parade. Everyone's got their arms and their hands outstretched in front of them to block their eyes from the sun. And it really did look like the Hitler salute. Everyone in this entire crowd is doing a Sieg Heil. Yeah, this video is getting demonetized, by the way. I literally said Sieg Heil and Nazi parade. Yeah, we're done. That's it. Channel's getting demonetized. Anyway, then I went back over to the C-17, because earlier in the day, the lineup to get into the C-17 was huge. It extended out the back, down the cargo ramp, out past the back of the tail, around under the left wing, and almost twice the length of the C-17 out in front of it all the way to the F-18 display, so it would have taken over an hour to actually get into the damn thing. But by this point, most people had either already left or were watching the F-35, so I decided I'd take that opportunity, since my camera was dead anyway and I'd already recorded a couple of passes from the F-35 on my phone, to take a poke around inside the C-17. I did, unfortunately, however, miss the C-17 that was flying at the time, as well as the Spartan and the Wedgetail, which was a shame. I can't even describe how beautiful it is to see these really big aircraft making passes and doing aerobatics. The C-27 Spartan was actually doing barrel rolls. This thing is surprisingly maneuverable for a big aircraft. And the P-2 Neptune came out for a short fly as well, but it had some troubles with hydraulics, I believe. And a KC-135, the aerial refueling tanker, actually did a pass while refueling two F-18s, so that was incredible to see, both of them attached to the wings as it came past. And then an F-18F Super Hornet was flying around to finish things off. There were no Tigers, unfortunately, but there was a Seahawk, the naval variant of the Black Hawk helicopter. And what else? Oh, the Vimy. There was a whole tent set up to commemorate the centenary of the Vickers Vimy, which was the first aircraft to fly from England to Australia 100 years ago, November 1919. So that was good to see. And a flight simulator for the F-35, which I had a go on. Very similar to a simulator like DCS. And I was chatting to the guy about landing flaps and air brakes and, you know, trying to come in for landing in the simulator, and he was saying that nobody who tries out the sim actually knew to ask about that sort of thing, so I think it was mainly set up for kids and families. I did crash. The F-35 has a tendency to roll over extremely easily at low speeds, particularly with the landing flaps out, so I came in for a landing. I think I was still going about 260 knots, but I went to adjust slightly and immediately rolled over on my back and planted it into the tarmac, so that was fun. There goes $115 million. Yeah, there's a reason why I never became a pilot. But apparently, crews of the F-35, at least the Australian pilots of the F-35A, have said they actually wanted it to be more responsive. So, I don't know what they're after, because I couldn't even control the thing. But anyway, there you have it. That was the Edinburgh Airshow 2019. This was the first time RAAF Base Edinburgh had actually hosted the annual Royal Australian Air Force Airshow in over a decade, so it was really fantastic to go and see, especially with so many new aircraft like the F-35 and the PC-21 trainers, as well as the Atlas. I was not expecting to see that phenomenal looking aircraft, that thing. And it was definitely a great day out. And I did manage to avoid sunburn through most of the day, even though there was minimal shade available for the amount of people that were there. Which brings me to the main problem. South Australia isn't exactly used to big events. Monica and I always joke that none of the international events, like singers, shows, concerts, ever come here. They always stick on the East Coast. And with Edinburgh not having hosted an airshow since 2007, well, there were almost twice as many people as they were actually expecting to turn up. And the queue to actually leave the event after it was done to get the crowds out of the gate and into buses back to the train station took 1 hour. No shade, standing in the queue to leave the event. For a whole flacking hour? Are you serious? Oh, by the way, since this is a military channel, the F word is now being replaced with the word flak, so... What the flak, Edinburgh? So I ended up getting horrifically sunburned just waiting to leave. Probably the second worst sunburn of my life. Definitely not the worst though, although perhaps that's a story for another time. And with that, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you have enjoyed. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas and have a fantastic new year. Celebrate your eyesight now that it's 2020. I'll let myself out. And that's how we're going to end the year.